Good morning. What we're going to do today is we're going to address self-concept and self-esteem in a micro-teaching assignment. The first thing I'm going to attempt to do is to define these two concepts for you and present to you this information in an organized manner. The first thing we're looking at, as I told you, is self-concept and self-esteem, okay? The reason the situation comes up, why should we study about self-concept and self-esteem? And here are the reasons: to have a more positive self-awareness, to honestly take a view of yourself, and to remove any internal barriers that may or may not block you from your full potential. What's the difference between the two, you may ask? Self-concept and self-esteem. Here they are. Self-concept is how you view yourself, how you see yourself, how you view yourself. It's the entire picture of you. It changes very slowly. If you've ever seen the picture of the little cat looking in the mirror, the cat looking in the mirror sees itself as a lion. I'll give you an example in a picture right here. We see in this picture we have a young lady, and this young lady is looking at herself, and she sees herself as very obese and very large, when in fact she's actually very slender, and you can see that the outline of her rib cage. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. The self-esteem, the self-concept we see here. A positive self-concept, this young man here, he's a young man in diapers, but he sees himself as a very affluent businessman, nicely dressed, okay? It's how we see ourselves, but it also changes slowly. Looking back, we're going to continue on here, and we see that we have a positive self-concept and we have negative self-concepts. The young lady looking at herself in the mirror, she sees herself negatively, okay? A positive person with a positive self-concept, they view themselves as lovable and worthwhile persons. So they see that they have value within them. Now, here are some characteristics of people with a positive self-concept. They like to ask questions. They take time to acknowledge their personal accomplishments. They set goals. They're persistent. Even though they may fail, they continue to try over and over again, trying to do it in a different manner, trying to do it in different ways. Okay? A negative self-concept is just the opposite. They feel very uncertain about themselves. They're very insecure. And they're uncomfortable within their own skin, and they don't try things or new things because they have a fear of rejection. So negative self-concept, they're uncomfortable in their own skin, they have a fear of rejection, and they don't try new things because they don't want to be rejected. But a positive self-concept, they're very comfortable, they ask questions, they're persistent, and they set goals, and then they acknowledge those goals once they've achieved them. Okay? Now here are some characteristics of people with negative self-concept. They look at only one detail and disregard the entire picture. If one thing is wrong, they focus on that one negative thing and disregard the entire picture. They minimize their achievements. They're being overly nice to people. They're people pleasers, or self-rescuer, or self-sacrificing martyr. They sacrifice themselves for the greater good. They blame others. What better way to deny our weakness is to blame other people for our weaknesses. They jump to conclusions and then they magnify faults. You may ask, how is it that we build our self-concept? How can we build our self-concept to be negative and not to be positive? The first thing I would recommend for you to do is to list and develop your personal strengths and abilities. What is it that you do well? Whatever you do well, take that list and say, hey, these are some things that I do well, so I'm going to focus on these things. Then you need to set attainable goals, goals that you can actually achieve. For example, some friends of mine are going to be running a marathon that's 26.2 miles. Now, 26.2 miles is not something that I can run tomorrow or the next day or even within the next 30 days. I cannot run 26.2 miles. But if I set a small attainable goal at 30 days out and say, hey, in 30 days, I will be able to run 5 miles. And I'll start with 1 mile a day. And in 30 days, I can be doing 5 miles a day. Small attainable goals over a set amount of time. Look for positive relationships with others. Recognize that you have accomplished every step of the way. No matter where you are in your life, you have accomplished something, look back upon those accomplishments and begin to give yourself some credit for them. Now, let's talk about self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is different from self-concept. The way you think and the way you feel about yourself. How do you feel about who you are as a person? That's your self-esteem. It can change from moment to moment. You may feel great when someone gives you a compliment, and then you may feel bad when someone puts you down or tells you something negative about yourself. Your self-esteem changes from moment to moment, okay? Your self-concept changes over time. Let's look at high self-esteem. You feel positive about yourself, your actions, and your future. You're excited, you're energetic. That's a positive self-esteem. Now, characteristics of people with high self-esteem, they're a lot more ambitious. They seek challenges that are worthwhile, and they go after demanding goals. They're self-confident, and they're more capable of having open, honest, and appropriate communications with people, those that have a high self-esteem, okay? Now this is low self-esteem. You feel negatively about yourself, your actions, and your future. Your future is very dim. You don't think things are going to happen for you. Things aren't going to go your direction. So you have a negative view of it, okay? Now here are some characteristics of people with low self-esteem. They're fearful of change. They seek the safety of familiar and the undemanding. So they'd rather be somewhere that they know a lot about as opposed to something that's unfamiliar to them. They're uncertain of their own thoughts and feelings. They don't know. They're not secure in their feelings. People with low self-esteem are often drawn to other relationships that are destructive and hurtful rather than helpful. So people with low self-esteem many times are in abusive relationships. Not just physically abusive, but also emotionally and mentally abusive because they themselves don't view themselves as a high self-worth or a high value. They also feel anxious. Let's talk about building your self-esteem. You need to first seek to understand whatever you have has an influence on your life. Be aware of what's around you. Look at what's going on around you. You have to be respectful towards yourself and refuse to reject yourself. Recognize that you are the source of your own choices, your actions, and you make your life what you want it to be. Building self-esteem continued. You have to stand up for your values and feelings, find appropriate ways to express them. These are things that you should do to build your self-esteem. Now what I'd like to do is show you an illustration on self-concept, a picture, and let you look at it and see that how it flows through a flow map, okay? So first we're going to look at your self-concept. Okay, we see your self-concept here. Your self-concept affects everything in this circle. The first thing it affects your friends and your relationships. As I said to you, people with a high self-concept, they have positive relationships, positive friends in their lives. If you have a negative self-concept, then this is going to affect your friends and the type of relationships you have. Your health, your body, your mind, and your fitness. This is affected by your self-concept. Your school, your work, your college, whether you're in higher education, whether you're working in the workforce, whether you're in the primary or secondary school, this is going to affect how you interact in this environment. Self-image, your looks and your style. Other general influences, your values and your beliefs. Whatever it is that you believe, your self-concept affects it. Money, budget, and possessions are all affected by your self-concept. And you can see here illustrated in this map, in this circle map. The next thing I want to show you is a photograph of your self-concept and what else flows from it, okay? So we're going to look at your past self, your present self, and your possible future selves in your self-schemas, the things that you believe and hold to be self-evident. So the first thing is in the circle we see that you have a self-concept of yourself. So here it is, your past self. What happened in your past, what took place in your past, or what was going on in your past, this is your past self, okay? If you had a great childhood and everything was perfect in your life, and you feel like you were raised, your parents treated you very kindly and dealt with you in a very kind manner, you have a positive past self. But now let's talk about your present self. What's going on in your life right now is positive things or is it negative things that talk about your present self? And then your possible future selves. Do you have a feeling that in the future things will go well for you? These are some, this is just another map that I found to be interesting that on self-concept, okay? Now, at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you some questions that I want you to begin thinking about, okay? The first thing is I would like for you to evaluate where you are with your self-concept, okay? It's either A or B. Do you feel that you have a positive self-concept? Do you feel that things are going well for you? You have a positive outlook? When you look at yourself in the mirror, do you see something that's great or do you see something that's not so great? So that's question number one. Where are you in your self-concept? Do you see yourself as positive or do you see yourself as negative? I would also like for you to do the exact same thing with your self-esteem, okay? But I'm going to put a spin on it. I would like for you to talk about your self-esteem in a positive way that's happened in the past. Tell me about a time in your past where your self-esteem was very high. Something happened, something took place, and your self-esteem was very high. And then I'd like for you to tell me about a time in your past where your self-esteem was very low. Something happened and your self-esteem was not where it needed to be. Would you please share with me those two experiences on your self-concept and on your self-esteem? But in your self-esteem, you're going to do it from a past experience because your self-esteem can change from moment to moment, but your self-concept changes a little slower and over time. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to teach you about self-concept and self-esteem.